My name is Josh. I go by Sideshow. I do the commentary for the English broadcast, and was incredibly wrong about Zeta Division at Reykjavik. The Valorant community has definitely been growing, but some places it's exploded and some places it's still yet to really get started. I think everyone was expecting the Korean region to boom and all of the Korean fans to latch onto it and it'd be a big esport there, which it hasn't quite done yet. But instead you saw this, to me, very surprising explosion in Japan, which is a region that isn't normally associated with FPS titles or being particularly involved in PC gaming that much. Obviously fantastically accomplished in fighting game tournaments and stuff like that, for example, but it's kind of amazing how Valorant has just taken hold. I think the most recent Japanese finals with, 18,000 people in the arena is just proof that there is a massive demand and hunger for it within that region, and I think especially considering how well the team did at Reykjavik. I think honestly the other regions, North America, Europe, South Americas, have kind of progressed as expected, I would say. There's always going to be a solid base within North America and EMEA. I was expecting the Turkish teams to do a bit better, but I think some Turkish players have done extremely well with Alfiye and CNED, for example. And I'm sure the finals happening in Istanbul will perk up the Turkish scene as well. I'm expecting that to be an extremely exciting event. But yeah, I think as for the regions within the EMEA, North America, South America, they've gotten attached to Valorant, but we've yet to see it really dominate or be the biggest esport in any of those regions, which perhaps it could in the future. I think at the beginning of 2021, the Japanese teams were turning up to tournaments and getting battered and barely able to win a map at the beginning of that year as well. So the progress has been spectacular. But it's very interesting as well because it's one of the only regions in which there's a large amount of players that come from a different region with language barriers as well. There are, of course, some South American players that play in the Brazilian region and vice versa, but the language barrier doesn't seem to be as much of a problem. When you look at teams like the old Crazy Raccoon, where they had a very large language barrier within the team between the Korean and the Japanese players, it seemed like a bit of a hindrance that might hold the Japanese scene back, as if they're trying to import better players but unable to properly integrate it and learn from it. So that was concerning to me in 2021. But I think the more that the teams have done well, the more that the player base seems to be growing, and that way you're getting better talent actually from the Japanese region. The Zeta Division was a good example of a full Japanese team where the star players were, homegrown, if you want to say it like that, where Laz and Sugar Hero, for example, Sugar Hero he was at the event. I think definitely the explosion within Japan, at least looking from the outside, appears to have happened when Zeta Division formed that roster, because that wasn't the same team that they were bringing to 2021 events. It was some attempt at a super team with combining players from Northampton and old Crazy Raccoon and stuff like that, and Zeta and putting them together into a team that had the best players from Japan. So that, I think, was the beginning of it, because then you actually have a competent team that can go to events and stand up for themselves rather than just be able to squeak out a map or a series here or there. So the fact, though, that there are now multiple teams able to do that is the impressive part. Well, that wasn't me, but that was on the podcast.
Yeah, that was on the podcast.
I don't run the graphics for the podcast.
So it wasn't actually you, but like.
Yeah, I'll run you through it.
Yeah.
So I was watching the games before of Zeta Division when they were playing online, and I didn't think they looked particularly good. A little bit sloppy, not as coordinated. They were doing a lot of fast hits that I didn't think were going to work once they got to Masters. And given the previous failings of the Japanese teams, I thought, okay, this is just going to be the same thing again. They don't look like they've improved enough to actually win anything. At the event itself, so then we were talking about the power rankings, and we just left them out completely. We didn't even really talk about them, and then just disregarded them. Then at the event, I think during practice they had a couple of maps that they were occasionally winning, and then they started improving, and they also slowed down their game a lot, and they made sure that they were playing with a lot more discipline. And I think they also just had a very hot streak at the tournament where their players were feeling confident, believing in themselves, hitting the shots, etc. So I think they had a dramatic improvement and a very good tournament performance there to be able to get them to third place. And of course, I look like an idiot because I said that they were not going to do anything and they come into third place. But yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing them here again, because I think there's still a question around whether or not Japan can repeat that level of success. And it doesn't have to be third place, but just is the Japanese region, are the Japanese teams now going to be consistently making playoffs? And that I think is a big question, because we've seen teams like Crew, for example, from LATAM, another very small region, make a semi-finals appearance at Champions, and then they just fell completely flat at Reykjavik. So it's one thing to win, or at least to go deep in one tournament. It's another thing to be able to do it over and over again. And that's what makes a team or a region really great and really worthy of respect, and something that people are going to expect great things from. I have watched so many VODs of Northampton because I was refusing to count out the Japanese teams because I've learned from my mistakes. But I've watched a lot of Northampton play, and I watched some of their games like the upper bracket final where they played against Ada Division, and they looked very nervous on stage. It was their first time playing in front of a crowd. They were playing very badly, I think. And then I watched their lower bracket final and their grand final performances where they seemed like they were playing a lot better, really confident, taking their fights well, and even being able to win on their permaban map like Icebox, for example, in the grand finals. I think it's very cool that Japan has been able to bridge the language barrier and create those teams that blend together talent from all over the place, because it gives you a much wider breadth. There's North American teams that are doing it as well, with the Guard, with Saya Player, for example, and T1 have now picked up a bunch of Korean players as well with Munchkin. So I think the big question for Japanese growth is whether or not they can continue to develop new talent that are very good at Valorant and enjoy playing Valorant. It's an exciting time, though, to be a Japanese fan. You can see it in the crowd. The larger your player base, the more likely it is that you're going to be seeing full Japanese teams, just because you have a large talent pool to pick from, and so you'd rather keep the language barrier as minimal as possible and have everybody speaking the same language perfectly. Somebody like Jojo, I believe, is fluent in Japanese whilst being a Korean player. At least that's what I've been told, which is, I mean, that's a wonderful skill to have, and that goes the same way for anybody in any region. I don't have a particular message, but I think the Japanese fans will be very happy to see me proven wrong over and over and over again if it means that your teams do well. So I'm happy with that too. I don't mind looking like an idiot. It's fun to watch teams pop off.